In this video, I'm going to compare the movie WALL-E, which is one of the Pixar animated movies, to the Emoji Movie. I don't even remember which studio put out that movie. It's not Illumination. I know the Emoji Movie is not from DreamWorks, definitely not from Pixar. Is it from Disney Animation? I don't think it is. Maybe it's from Sony Pictures Animation. It's not one of the Blue Sky Studios movies, so I don't know exactly which studio put this one out. And actually, I have not seen the Emoji Movie. The main reason for that is because the things I've heard about it made me go, oh, that one does not interest me at all. I have not heard anybody say that's a good movie. I've heard that basically everybody agrees it's pretty bad. So I'm like, why would I actually check this movie out? There's no reason for me to watch it, so I haven't. Whereas when it comes to WALL-E, this is a movie I've seen multiple times. Honestly, I don't even remember when it is I watched WALL-E for the first time. I couldn't say, because I watched it for the first time years and years back. So as long as I can remember, I have seen WALL-E. So in this case, man, it's easy to say which movie's better. I mean, WALL-E is obviously better. I don't know who is possibly going to say unironically that the Emoji Movie is better than WALL-E. I mean, when you look at weaker Pixar films, pretty much all of them are obviously better than animated movies you get from other studios, that is for sure. Like, all of the weaker Pixar films are obviously better than the Emoji Movie. And when it comes to WALL-E, I really enjoy this one. I don't have very many criticisms to level against it. I mean, is the movie a bit too heavy-handed? Maybe, you could certainly say that, but I think that it's incredibly impressive how much personality that robot WALL-E has. I mean, think about it. You got a robot that doesn't have a human face, and WALL-E barely talks. I mean, throughout the runtime, sure, we hear him say Eva, but other than that, WALL-E doesn't talk. And yet, just through the way that WALL-E moves his robotic body, what he does during the runtime, the few times he does say something, it all just manages to communicate so much, and thus you really get emotionally invested in WALL-E. And it's also impressive how much you care about a romance between two robots. The relationship between WALL-E and Eva, man, it works so well. It's so sweet. That moment where the two of them are basically dancing in space using a fire extinguisher. It sounds on paper like it should be really silly, but you watch it on screen and it's just beautiful. It hits so hard. The music is fantastic. The visuals are fantastic. That when you get to the end of the movie and you see Eve is just desperately trying to get WALL-E repaired, desperately trying to get WALL-E to remember who he is, remember who she is, it hits so hard. And then when you see Eve, you give WALL-E the robot version of a kiss, it hits really hard as well. I like how the first half of WALL-E is almost completely devoid of dialogue. You have, a few words here and there, but for the most part, it's non-verbal. You just have the music and what you're seeing on screen, and then the second half, it really gets pretty different with WALL-E going up into space, and we go into this ship, the Axiom, and see how the people that live on the Axiom have just grown very complacent, where they're just doing the same thing day in and day out and not thinking anymore. They've lost their sense of curiosity, but then WALL-E's arrival shakes things up and thus gets them to basically wake up and not be complacent anymore, and thus they remember that sense of wonder, adventure, curiosity again. And also, I like how the closest thing the movie has to a villain is the autopilot. But when you think about it, you're like, is the autopilot really a villain? Not really, because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a robot that's just following its programming to the letter. There isn't any real nefariousness or maliciousness in what the autopilot is doing, honestly. It's just a program that's following the instructions it was given. Also, I like the arc that you have for the captain of the ship, where at first, this guy is technically the captain, but in reality, he's not doing much. You see that at the beginning, that the title of captain doesn't really mean much at all. I mean, autopilot does pretty much everything on the ship, and this guy just does a few things, but he's not particularly important at all. But then later on in the movie, you really see the captain wake up and actually assert himself. You see him actually stand up, and thus he actually has this spiritual awakening, you could call it. Also, I like how the axiom looks. It's very interesting. Overall, I'm a big fan of Wally. I think it's easily one of the best Pixar films. And so I think it's, well, easily better than the Emoji Movie. That'll wrap things up for this one. Bye, everyone.